Hello everyone, it's Theme Park Avenue, I'm Eric. Welcome to Epic Universe Reviews, a series of videos reviewing each of the 11 rides at the all-new Universal's Epic Universe theme park at Universal Orlando Resort. In each video, I will talk through my experience on one of the rides, provide useful information about it, and give some final thoughts on how good the ride is. For the 5th video in this series, I am reviewing Monsters Unchained: The Frankenstein Experiment. Spoilers incoming. Monsters Unchained might have been the most hyped up ride at Epic Universe. I saw people calling it one of the best dark rides in the world before it even opened. I went in pretty excited for it did sound very impressive and unique. However, I must admit that I am generally not a dark ride fan, especially high budget ones. I am a roller coaster enthusiast first and foremost, and I am much more easily impressed by coasters and thrilling rides than dark rides. When I do love a dark ride, it's usually because of its entertainment value and atmosphere. Shooting dark rides are my favorite type of dark ride for that very reason. I am not at all in the target audience for Monsters Unchained in general, and I wouldn't call it one of my favorite theme park rides as a whole. However, I would call it one of my favorite dark rides. Before visiting Epic Universe, my favorite dark ride in the world was far and away The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man at Islands of Adventure. It's not only super fun and atmospheric, but also had impressive moments. Monsters Unchained has these strengths as well, but is it better than Spider-Man? Is it the best dark ride ever? Well, to the first question, most would say yes right off the bat based on YouTube comments I saw before the ride opened. But let's talk about the experience of Monsters Unchained, covering its strengths and its weaknesses. The start of the experience is pretty much perfect. The castle facade is beautiful, and it's awesome to enter through those grand doors. Maybe it's less impressive than Hogwarts Castle, but it's exactly what it needed to be. As for the queue, I considered using the single rider line to save time because I heard that that was very fast moving. But I'd also heard that the main queue is one of the best in any park. The main wait was short, and I ended up going for it, and I'm glad I did. The line is almost always moving, so it feels like a walking tour of the Frankenstein castle. You enter some rooms full of details for fans of monsters to catch. I don't know much about the Universal monsters. Go up a set of stairs, pass through several more rooms and show more details about the story, like Victoria, Frankenstein, and Igor encountering the monsters, and a vampire bat in a flashy containment unit. And then you come out to a balcony that overlooks the stairwell and is under some fun tubes with lighting effects. This all indicates the experiment is underway, and is a great walking attraction pretty much. It's just the queue too. But after that, you enter the first of 2 pre-shows. I must say, these are the best pre-shows I've ever experienced. The first one sees Igor on a screen explaining that you will board a vehicle that he controls remotely. He demonstrates how it moves, and this was actually where I learned that the ride system was the KUKA robotic arm that Forbidden Journey uses, and I was very happy to see that. It is a phenomenal dark ride system. It allows for dynamic movement and close-ups with certain scenes. This first scene is not only enjoyable because of the miniature robot arm that I like watching, but also because Igor is super entertaining. He's very high energy and speaks in a creepy way. His last line is very ominous, "The doctor will see you now." There's a ton of personality in the animation and performance, it's impossible not to love it. After this, Igor sends you into the room of the main pre-show. If all works according to plan, Dr. Victoria Frankenstein presents her new and improved animatronic of the monster that everybody inaccurately calls Frankenstein. Assuming the ride works as it's meant to, the characters are both animatronics. These animatronics are fantastic, moving so fluidly and naturally. Many of the movements are just hand gestures that make the scenes a little more active, but there are some inspired choices. For example, there's a subtle change in Victoria's face and her arms when she cracks a joke. Additionally, the monster has a wider range of motion when his fears are triggered, and my personal favorite part is when he points and motions for you to enter the next room at the end of the pre-show. The story is explained in a very simple way here. Victoria has captured and controlled the other Universal monsters, and she built her own monster, and now she's going to try to take control of Count Dracula. But he seems like he's not fully contained, as his spirit interrupts the pre-show. The only issue with the story is that Victoria's motivation isn't entirely clear to me. I think she's trying to control the monsters to prove they're not that scary, especially her own monster. However, controlling these fully sentient creatures seems kind of messed up, and I wonder if Victoria is supposed to be a morally gray character. I don't know for sure, but I do know she simultaneously wants acceptance from other people and control over all the monsters. Still, she is a very interesting and memorable character, thanks to her great vocal performance and interesting, if convoluted, past. the monster is also tons of fun to watch, mostly for his movements. He just kind of exists to do what Victoria says, but he's a lovable iteration of this monster. I love this pre-show. It sets a tone for the ride before the actual main story kicks in, and it's quite memorable. For that reason, I do recommend waiting in the main line. You can probably catch a pretty short wait for it at some point, and even if you can't, it is worth an extra bit of waiting. Now for the ride experience. At the start, you are treated to an exceptional Igor animatronic with more great dialogue as he sends you on your way. In this first scene, you can see the other vehicles in front of you, and I'm fine with that. It's the very start of the ride, you're all supposed to sort of be starting your journey at around the same time, no issue with immersion there. The next room might be the coolest part of the ride to me. You see a monster playing the organ as actual flames come out of it. The music is ominous, the visual is grand, and the arm pulls you in so close to the monster. I learned after the ride that this is apparently the Phantom of the Opera. As someone who only knows him from Broadway, I did not catch that. Another detail I love here is the implication that since the Phantom is also under Victoria's control, she asked him to play this awesome music as she completed her experiments, giving her more personality than just being a scientist. Next up is another great moment where the monster grabs two large electric conductors to channel a current between them, and it looks awesome thanks to both the animatronic and lightning effects. Here is where the actual story gets set into motion. Dracula escapes and says something inaudible before releasing the rest of the monsters. Igor has a hilarious and instantly iconic line that explains to Victoria, and also the audience, what is going on, while still providing some entertainment. Most of the ride beyond this point is just a presentation of the other monsters as they attack you and Victoria fends them off. You see the creature from the Black Lagoon, the Wolfman, looking much cooler than the version at the other ride in this area, and the Mummy, which reminded me of Universal Studios' Revenge of the Mummy. I think it's cool that there's multiple interpretations of one character in this one resort. The Mummy scene is probably the least interesting. The animatronic mostly just dangles above you, and he's not as active as most of the others, but it's still alright. After that, Igor and the monster work to channel some sunlight, or at least just some daylight, and reflect it to kill Dracula and his monsters. This was a moment where I clearly noticed the backstage area, and was slightly taken out of the experience as the car seemed to linger there before tilting upward to look at a screen. This is a good time to address one of the few major criticisms people have given this ride. There are moments where the immersion is broken. The other one I noticed was briefly seeing the car in front of me during the Wolfman scene, but others have noticed much more major things that I did not notice. For example, you can see the robotic arm controlling Dracula's first animatronic in some POVs. I missed that, but right after that, you pass by a large curtain as you transition to the next scene. I also somehow missed that, so maybe I just wasn't looking for technical issues, but many have observed those problems. For me, these would not be a big deal even if I did notice them. I think creativity and entertainment are way more important on a dark ride than polish, and I was plenty entertained by the scenes surrounding these parts, so they didn't really bother me much. One issue that might have gotten to me was the now somewhat notorious Final Dracula animatronic. When it works, it lunges toward the vehicle before getting shot through the chest with sunlight. This animatronic has not worked for everyone, and I've seen multiple POVs where it was static. For me, the animatronic worked and it was pretty awesome visually, but I do have a big problem with this ending. The story up until this point is very straightforward. Monsters are freed from Victoria's control, you encounter them one by one, yeah. You would expect the ride to end with her beating Dracula, and I don't know if it does or not. The ride ends with you seeing Dracula shot by the light, hearing Victoria say, "All monsters will bow down to the name Frankenstein," and Igor wishing you on your merry way. So, did the light beam eliminate Dracula? I feel like such a powerful character escaping a high-tech unit and freeing every other monster in seconds shouldn't lose to a nightlight. The ending of the ride was kind of rushed, and the very final moment further confuses me about the fate of Dracula. When Igor says goodbye, he gets attacked by a bunch of bats. They have a red mist around them, and to me that means they're still under Dracula's control, so he can't be gone. I wish the ride made it more clear where the story would go from here, so the conclusion is a bit more clear and satisfying. The other thing I dislike about the ending is that Igor is attacked by so many bats surrounded by red mist, that it looks like he's getting eaten alive and blood is flying everywhere. In reality, it's just a final comedic moment where he gets attacked. I think maybe they should have gone with just one bat hitting him, so it didn't look like a horrifying, violent death. Speaking of horrifying, violent stuff, The other more common complaint with this ride is that it did not live up to the promise that it would be scary. The preview video about Dark Universe said this would be a borderline PG-13 dark ride. It is very much not, and I wonder if Universal creators were forced to tone down the ride, or if that was just a blatant lie the whole time. The ride has monsters, and there is a dark atmosphere in general, but there's no intentional gore, no jump scares, and the atmosphere is not even really that scary, even compared to things like Forbidden Journey's spider scene. Heck, the main villain is quote-unquote killed by a beam of light. There's one scene where a bunch of wooden plates are falling in front of Dracula, and he's dashing through them to get to you, and I thought he was going to get brutally impaled by one of those because they looked like wooden stakes. There were definitely opportunities like that to make this scarier, but I do scare easily, so I don't really mind. I think the ending is the one area where a more frightening end for the villain and more comedic end for Igor would have served the ride better. But that does it for the ride experience. Overall, I do love Monsters Unchained. It's not perfectly polished, and I can't say I like the ending, but it has great physical sets, fantastic animatronics, a creative take on a simple story, and memorable characters and dialogue. Most of you probably care more about those first two things and other technical elements, but I care about the story and writing stuff just as much, if not more. To me, great dark rides stand out not by being expensive, but by being creative. One of my favorite dark rides is Monster Mansion at Six Flags Over Georgia. It's got lots of animatronics and sets, but it's nowhere near as elaborate as most Universal rides. It's just a fun and atmospheric one with memorable characters and music. To further illustrate the reason I have this preference, one of my favorite moments on Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey is the simple line, "We haven't lost anyone yet, not this week anyway." It's just fun and it gives the ride personality. And this ride, Monsters Unchained, deserves the praise it got for its technical elements, no doubt, but I think the characters and writing are underappreciated so far. Without the personality of our main characters, this would just be a display of half a dozen monsters vaguely getting close to the ride vehicle and nothing else. The ride is made so much more fun by the strong script and voice acting, in my opinion. So props to the writers and voice actors for making this ride go from an expensive and uneventful experience to one of the best dark rides I've ever been on. Now let's answer the question, is this the best dark ride I've done? My favorite currently, as I said, is Spider-Man at Islands of Adventure, and I think the similarities between these rides must be stated. They both have dynamic ride vehicles that spin around as you go on a perilous journey with a hero, protecting you from an assortment of enemies. Both rides also have fun dialogue and characters. I will give Monsters Unchained points for crafting an original character and some new interpretations of old ones and doing so successfully. Also, it does have better physical sets than Spider-Man as a whole. However, while Spider-Man is heavily screen-based, it is not without great practical effects. The part where the gravity gun hits your vehicle and it looks like you're soaring above the buildings is accomplished mainly with practical sets, and in my opinion, it is the single best moment on any dark ride I've done. The ride makes you feel like you're part of the action in a way that most rides, including Monsters Unchained, don't really do. I also just find Spider-Man's writing even more funny and quotable than Monsters, but that could change with time. So I have to say, I still prefer Spider-Man for being just as technically impressive, but also remaining the pinnacle of great storytelling on dark rides. Either way, Monsters Unchained is still way up there on my list of favorite dark rides. To end this review, I will be giving the ride a number score out of 10. A 1 means it is among the absolute worst of Universal attractions, such as Fast and Furious Supercharged. A 10 means it is among the absolute best of Universal attractions, such as Velocicoaster or Spider-Man. Those scores are just my opinion, as is a score for Monster Unchained. I will be giving the ride a 9 out of 10. It's not quite the perfect 10 that Spider-Man is to me, but it's among Universal's absolute best rides, and you'll likely enjoy it even more than I did. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, maybe learned a few new things about the ride. Please comment down below any questions you have, and subscribe and stay tuned for the rest of the Epic Universe reviews. I'll see you next time.